have much of an agenda. I know I wrote some things on the invite that I wanted to specifically go through, but ask questions, and we can kind of work through some other stuff. The reason, just to kind of give you guys a little background, the reason that I wanted to do this was I feel like it's been a while, like since 2017, when we were transitioning and doing a lot more documentation into CompuClaim. I feel like that was the last time we really sat down and sifted through things. And I've been able to talk with some other program coordinators about how they're doing Medicaid billing to see if there's ways that we can maximize, especially when you guys are providing different types of therapy services within a home visit or within an evaluation. I'm meeting with all the disciplines. I grouped you guys together, all the disciplines individually, but truthfully, OTs, PTs, and speech, that's where we can really, I think, see some more growth in our Medicaid revenue. Our ECSEs, our social workers, Dana, Bev, they don't have access to all of the different codes that you guys have access to and all of the different treatments and evals. So Katie also Holting has obviously come on from Wyandotte County, and they do, every program does things a little bit differently, but she and I and Megan were talking about some different things that we can do, I think, moving forward, that will help, again, just kind of relook and make sure we're getting the biggest bang for our money. We've been sitting steady the last 3 years, about $350,000 worth of Medicaid revenue, which is way better than we had been in years past. And I like that it's 3 years of pretty consistent revenue too. That tells me that it wasn't a fluke, and as long as the children still qualify for Medicaid, that's still going to be a pretty realistic number. Again, I think that we can push it a little bit more and see some more money come in, and then that money gets to come back to you guys is my main goal. So any questions that you guys wanted to share or talk about before we kind of get started, like I said, with the agenda that I had in mind? Good.
I think I'm home now, but I think that I will probably have questions as we go along. So I know one of mine specifically, if we can have time to get to it, is really trying to maximize the evaluation and reevaluation codes. That's one of my questions, like when we can, because I know it's like once a year kind of thing. So
yes,
that's one question I have.
Yeah, and we'll definitely talk about that too. One of the things I can tell you right off the bat is Medicaid does not pay for reevaluation for early intervention. So you always have to use an actual eval code. If you use a reeval code, we won't get paid, period. Okay. So speech, we don't have reeval codes, but I know that you guys do. So thinking about and addressing the reeval piece, don't use those codes. Use your actual evaluation codes, and we can just kind of dive in and start talking about evals truthfully. I've got this pulled up, which kind of defines some OT and PT eval codes, and then I added some feeding codes on here, which I think OTs can bill swallowing evals too. So when we think about eval codes, Laura Nelson and I were talking that you guys have basically low, moderate, and high complexity codes. You can see here, someone is not muted.
I think it's Megan McConaughey.
I just muted her. How's that? Better? Sorry, Megan McConaughey. So you guys can see when you look here that whether you're billing a low, a moderate, or a high complexity, we get paid the same amount of money. And the low and moderate and high complexity has nothing to do with the child's development, but it has to do with how long you're spending doing the evaluation. So if you guys are spending, I forget if I think it's 30 minutes correlates with low, 45 minutes correlates with moderate, 60 minutes correlates with high complexity. So for example, if you guys are all if you're the evaluator, let's say, and I'm in there as the FSC, let's say you guys are spending 45 minutes doing OT or PT evaluation, looking at motor skills. But we happen to be in there, let's say, for 90 minutes because it's a Spanish speaking family and there's it just takes longer with interpreting. Those additional 45 minutes that you guys are just sitting there because you've billed a moderate complexity for 45 minutes, you've got 45 minutes of just sitting there, you can bill that 45 minutes as family service coordination. The whole time you're in an evaluation, you should be engulfing your minutes with either an eval code or FSC code. So most of the time you might have, or you probably will have, two codes when you're doing an evaluation, whether you're the FSC or not. The reason for that is anyone can bill FSC up until the IFSP is signed and dated. And then moving forward, only the FSC can bill Medicaid. You can also bill right here, you can bill specialized instruction as well. So let's say, you can bill this in an evaluation if you wanted to. You can bill FSC to make up those extra minutes. Specialized instruction would be if you were talking to mom, again, let's say about sleep during an evaluation and you felt like it was out of the realm of PT or OT, it wasn't necessarily family service coordination, you could bill those minutes as specialized instruction. This year, Medicaid made some changes. So now we can overlap T1017 and we can overlap T1027 with any other codes that are happening. It used to just be that we could only bill FSC and a therapy code simultaneously. Now you can bill FSC or ECSC and the other person is billing a therapy code. Does that make sense? I see some chats going up. Hold on a second.
I have a quick one. Could two people bill FSC at the same time or the specialized instruction, like at the same, so we're out there 10, 10, 15, two people billing that same code. So it doesn't have to be one, okay. Perfect.
Not for family service coordination and not for specialized instruction because of how those codes are not medical codes. So they're different. Those are more of an educational code, truthfully. If you're billing a therapy discipline code, like, a 92506 or a 97, if some kind of more ICD-9 type of therapy code, then those codes can't overlap, but you can overlap either T1017 or T1027. Sorry, I'm going to go back to my chat box real quick. Trina said she thinks 45 minutes is as high for PT. That could be, absolutely. Katie, do we need to make sure FSC does not overlap? No, because think about like if you were working on a draft of an IFSP, at the same time I was working on the draft of an IFSP at home and we both happened to bill FSC at the same time, that's totally fine. FSC can overlap like that. The biggest piece that's going to differentiate between when you can bill family service coordination and when you can bill specialized instruction is you can only bill specialized instruction when the child is also present. So if you're talking to mom about resources, actually let's say this, let's say you're talking to mom on the phone and about sleep. that would be FSC because the kid isn't present. But if you're in the home as part of the evaluation, if you're in the home as part of the therapy session, then you can bill T1027, which is the specialized instruction code. Megan McConaughey said, could we bill a 15-minute eval, and then can we bill 45 minutes for FSC? Yes, I mean, if you're only spending 15 minutes evaluating motor, yeah, you could bill that low complexity. If you feel like you're spending 30 minutes, then bill the 30 minutes. You know, it's so
Okay.
so bill whatever is relevant to the time of, you know, but if you're with me and we're looking at a 2.5-year-old with speech language development, you may only spend 15 minutes doing a motor eval, and the rest of the time is going to be FSC. And again, we get paid the same amount regardless of the code. So, but I still think it's good to be as honest as you can.
Yes, not trying to be manipulative, but also thinking about maximizing what we could be billing. So because the FSC are per 15-minute units, right? So how?
FSC is, they pay per minute. So if you bill 2 minutes, they're going to take the $10 divided by
okay.
2, and we'll get 45 cents or whatever.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
So just knowing that though, like, so say, you know, like you just gave an example, because that's happened many times, 15 minutes. And then when we document FSC, if we just do like T1017, how do you want us to document the FSC code? 1027, I get the specialized instruction, but if we're doing, excuse me, just the other FSC part, how do you want us to document that this is just for, evaluations?
Yeah, I would do, you know, use one of your FSC starter statements. You guys all do a fantastic job of using those anyway. I'm trying to pull them up and look at it, but I can't because I'm sharing. But, you know, there's one in there that references coordinated the service delivery during an evaluation by, again, sharing program resources, discussing development, you know, discussing early intervention program. Like, you can just add on a couple things, but if you're using a starter statement and that log were to get pulled for an audit, that's all they're looking for. We just want to tack on a little bit of extra information to be a little more specific about what that was.
Okay.
Carrie posted, you don't think OTs can bill for swallow, but you can bill for treatment. Okay, so the SLPs can bill for, I wasn't sure, I knew that code is an SLP code.
At least it's not listed in CompuClaim, like as I looked up, and so the only evals we have are the 15, 30, 30, 45, 60, I think.
Okay.
No evaluation, but we can treat.
Okay, let me move that somewhere else. Okay. All right, I will move this later and I will send this out to you guys. So that would be like initial evaluations. When you're doing, let's say Nikki and I are working together with a family and we decide that we need PT support. So we have Angie Pedrati join our team. The first time Angie comes out with us, Angie can actually bill that first consult visit as an evaluation if she feels like she's done evaluation. Now, you wouldn't, because I know most of you guys are doing that. The first time you see a child, most of you are probably doing an evaluation, whether it's a sensory profile or whether you're doing an evaluation looking at feeding, or again, looking at that motor development if you're the first on scene. So that first joint visit can, if you're comfortable and you can say, again, ethically, yes, I did an evaluation, go ahead and enter that into CompuClaim. If you feel like you've done more treatment than eval, then bill it as treatment. Again, I don't want you guys to do things that aren't ethical, but you can use that eval code for that first consult visit if you've done eval. Does that make sense?
It does. And then when are we able to use that evaluation code again for that same family? Because isn't it just once a calendar year?
Yes. So Medicaid will reimburse one evaluation per year.
Per discipline, right?
Per discipline,
Okay.
correct. So, which is another thing to consider. So, if Nikki and I are seeing the child and we bring in Angie, but Angie was part of the eval team, if Angie bills an eval code at that first consult visit, we're not going to get paid that eval code because she billed an eval at the initial eval.
Oh, jeez.
Right. So this is why I haven't talked to you guys about this. And I've just said bill treatment because then you don't have to figure all of this stuff out. Does that make sense? Like,
But we get paid more for treatment anyways. Really.
that's just it. Yes, I know.
Okay, so my question is, like, I just got off a visit. It's the first time in probably 18 months I've seen this family. It was with Laura. And so basically I could bill out evaluation, but it was also for feeding. So I was sort of evaluating, but I do that as kind of like the moderate or low because we spent 15 to 30 minutes doing that, and then also bill treatment of swallowing?
Yes, you can bill both of those. Yeah.
Which then in essence, I would get, that would be 100, give or take.
Versus 48. Right.
Or versus 63. Okay.
Correct. And the reason that we can do that, early ECI, which is this Medicaid. So this Medicaid manual is for therapists providing early intervention. This has nothing to do with therapists who are doing medical-based practice. So the reimbursement laws and rules are very, very different. And that's also why we can bill an eval and a treatment in the same day. We don't need a doctor's script. We don't need, approval from Medicaid to do this. Like we can literally bill for the things that are happening in real time. And we don't have to have these medical components other than Kathy just getting a general script from the physician to approve early intervention services as an umbrella. That covers all of you guys, no matter what. She doesn't have to get a script for PT, a script for OT, a script for speech. She just gets a script for early intervention, period. And that covers all of the codes that you guys would bill, including family service coordination and including specialized instruction. So fast forward to an annual, since we're still talking about evals right now. So at an annual, let's say you go in and you're updating the APS, which we definitely need to do at an annual. And then you're doing a routines-based interview with the parent and writing outcomes and all that stuff. And let's say you're in there for an hour. You can still do a 30-minute eval code, which might be your low complexity code. And then you can do 30 minutes of family service coordination for the time it took to do the RBI, write the outcomes, write the services. And then obviously, if you're the FSC, you can obviously bill any time outside the home as family service coordination when you're prepping the IFSP and printing it up and marking it complete and doing all those lovely things that you guys are so good at doing. So really that eval code, again, bill an eval code for sure at the annual for the time that you're spending really diving into development, and then bill FSC to encompass and surround those other minutes and get them documented. I feel like for the most part, that's been happening with the exception of maybe the eval code at an annual.
I have a quick question because I feel like the annual is often like within, especially if it's like the second annual within, it hasn't been a full year.
Right.
And is that still okay?
Yeah, it's within a calendar. I believe it's with a calendar year.
Okay. Like if
yeah.
you've done it 2017, then one in 2018, one in, okay.
Yeah, I don't know that it matters that it's 12 months necessarily. Like, does that make sense? So I think that that's okay. Another piece that Katie and I have talked about, and I've never talked about this to you guys because I've just waited for KDHE to say we have to do this. And they kind of told us that we have to do this. So I'm gonna to share this with you just as to think about, not saying we're gonna start doing this, but KDHE has a requirement that on an annual IFSP, you need to have the input of 2 different disciplines. I will be perfectly honest, I do not know why, because the federal government requires we have 2 different disciplines at initial and at exit, which we don't do that at exit either, but we're not going to talk about that right now yet either. So at an annual, if there are, like, let's say Nikki's the FSC and I'm supporting on an annual, I can go out there with Nikki at that annual IFSP and kind of hang out with her, and I can do speech updating for language and stuff like that. And I could bill a speech eval, and Nikki's billing an OT eval, and Nikki's billing family service coordination. So you don't have to have them in person with you. You can actually just add them on to that participation page, saying that they participated in writing. They don't have to be physically present. But moving forward, we really want to think about how we can start adding in a second person participating during an annual. I'm going to pull up and share the consent form packet so you guys can see the particular page that they're talking about. So again, so let's say Nikki had the annual and I couldn't make it out there with her. On this particular page, you know, Nikki might have her name up here, mom's name down here, and then down here, Nikki's going to have my name as the SLP, and then she's going to document that I participated in writing. So that's another way that, again, moving forward, we can document that we have multiple people who are participating in the consideration of an annual IFSP.
But that would be for a kid that, like, you were already on their plan, not for just like a random kid that only has one provider, correct?
So that makes it easier if I'm on the IFSP, but because we're teaming children and we're presenting them in team quarterly now, you can pick anyone who's on the team, or you can just pull someone who is on the initial evaluation team from your eligibility page and just take one of your initial evaluators because they also participated in writing. So that's why I have such an issue with this, because KDHE is literally saying, well, then just pull someone from the team and just write that they participated in writing. And I'm thinking, what's the point? But that's what we were out of compliance with as an agency this year, was we don't have multiple disciplines input on our annual IFSP. So I thought, okay, we can try to do this different. But that would be something to consider too. If you do have multiple people, is there a way you could facilitate a meeting together with another discipline, maximize your eval codes, but then also obviously they would be there in person. Questions about that? I know that's a completely different, track as well.
But Monica, just to clarify, if they are in writing, then the second person, they can't bill an eval code because the child's not present, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that would only be like second eval or their eval code if they both were in the house for the
Yes.
annual. Okay,
Correct.
just
Yep.
clear.
If you're just putting them down that they participated in writing, in my mind, you're just doing that to make KDHE happy.
Okay.
So whatever.
So Monica, so what you're saying is for the annual eval, to go ahead and put somebody that's on the team in the participated in writing and just letting that person know I put you, if they're either a consul or they could just be anyone from the team. Is that correct? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you guys are kind of the first group that I'm meeting with. I'm meeting with ECSEs and social, meeting with everybody moving forward. So everyone's going to know that this is happening. So it's not like, oh my gosh, Jocelyn's doing this whole new thing. You know, everybody will have heard this. You guys are going to forget to do it because it's new. And a lot of us are old and we can't learn new things, and it's totally fine. in my mind, this is not a major thing, but it was on my plan to address, and this was one of the ways I was going to address it. Again, we're just going to do the best we can do. You guys are doing a fantastic job. I think this is really pretty minor. So that's truthfully how I feel about it. Angie asked, do we have to do that on an exit no longer eligible? The answer is we are supposed to be doing that on an exit no longer eligible, because you are supposed to have two different disciplines whenever you're looking at eligibility, on the entrance, on the exit. I thought tackling the annual piece was maybe the easier, I don't know, the easier of the two. And then maybe next year we start, I don't know how to do this. But yes, whenever you're looking at eligibility, you would want to theoretically reach out to the team and say, hey, I've got this kid. I don't think he's eligible anymore. We're going to do an eval on this date. This time, can someone come with me? They would theoretically come with you again to do that evaluation, determining that they're no longer eligible. And then they could also bill an eval code for that. We have not been, Nikki knows this. Nikki is very aware we're not in compliance with this part of the exit process. And she and I have talked about this at various times. And I've been like, yeah, I don't think we're ready to talk about this yet. And we might as well talk about it. But again, ironically, that's not the thing we've been cited for being out of compliance with. So it's kind of like, you know, pick and choose your hurdles. So hearing all this about evaluations, about annuals, about exits, like, how are you guys feeling? What do you think? Where are you at?
Monica, does this have to coincide with like presenting at a meeting? Like I present a kiddo at a meeting for an annual review, and like whoever would document if I don't have someone on my team already, like, do we have to be that on the ball with it, or can you just talk to someone and say, hey, okay?
So KDHE's reasoning is because we do primary coaching, because we present kids at staffing during team, because we're doing quarterly reviews, we don't even really have to say, hey, I'm doing an annual, can I put someone on the IFSP? We're just saying the team is part of that child's services. The family has access to any of us anyway. So just pick someone who's on the team, who's been there and participated in a team meeting that the child's been staffed at. Does that make sense? Or discussed at, I should say. Staffed is not the right word. Discussed.
So for the exit, is in writing not good enough then? Is that what you're saying? Like the same.
Right. If you're doing it all at the same time and at an exit, participating in writing would theoretically not be good enough unless, Chloe, you and I went out to evaluate on a Monday, and then like 4 days later, you went back out and you exit them 4 days later. Then it's okay to document I participated in writing. But if you're doing it all the same day, which most of us do that, then you would want your second discipline in person as well. Again, something to strive for. So when they look at our compliance for like IFSPs, you either get a 0 or you get a 2 or you get a 4. We're going for a 2, like literally, like that's all I care about these days. I used to really want a 4 because it was best practice, and a 4 is like an A, and I love A's. We're going for a 2, girls. Like, let's see it out. That's all we're doing. So again, just some things to hold and try, and you're going to forget, and it, in the grand scheme of life, it doesn't really matter. I probably shouldn't be recording this one. I might have to delete and re-record. Deuces. That's right, Megan. Deuces. Other questions thinking about evaluations, annuals, and new information about exits?
I have a quick question that I'm not quite certain how to bill it because tend to update the AEPS at the 6-month review too.
Mhm.
How exactly should I bill that?
You should bill that. If you build it as an eval, we wouldn't get reimbursement for it. But so you could bill it as therapy. You could also bill it as, your units of specialized instruction, if you wanted to, because any discipline can bill specialized instruction code now as well. You could also do maybe a 30-minute OT eval or 15-minute, however many minutes, and then the rest of your time, either OT therapy code if you're addressing therapy, or if you're talking about overall development, you could do specialized instruction code.
Okay. I feel like I've been billing it I'm trying to look to see what code it is. I feel like I've been billing it like the therapeutic procedure, but I'm always like, I don't know if that's right.
This one right here.
Yeah, I made that, or I don't know. I think that's the one I've been doing.
Okay. Yeah, you guys have so many codes. It's amazing to me how many application of modality codes that you guys have.
I usually bill it as FSC because I'm usually doing it when the kid's not there. So I don't know, that's just my input, but.
And I would say, yeah, if the kiddo isn't there, then definitely FSC
I feel like FSC makes sense to me too, because I feel like I do it to help in the plan, like, the IFSP, like goal writing and making sure, we're covering all areas. And
yeah. And I would say this too. I mean, ultimately, you guys have to bill what you're comfortable for. So I'm going to tell you all the things that we can do and are legally able to do. But what you're doing in that home, you need to walk away feeling like, okay, I billed for what I did, and I'm not just trying to make a buck for Infotopper. That's not what this is about. This is about looking at, okay, are you doing multiple things? And if so, let's get the money for the multiple things you're doing. Let's not make you do multiple things when you don't need to. Does that make sense? Megan's saying when she does an AEPS at the 6-month review, she bills the 97110, which is the one that or 97503.
No, it should be 530.
97530. I probably just made that up.
So, and with that being said, it is if the child is present, and this is if I'm just doing an AEPS or an RBI. I don't always do planning well enough to do an AEPS and RBI before the actual review. But if I'm doing the review and it's all together, I generally will just do an FSC code.
For a 6-month.
The whole thing.
Yeah. And I think that's totally fine. I mean, honestly, it's totally fine. I think that there's a fine line between, again, thinking about, okay, we're at Medicaid 101, and then we were at 401. And now 3 years later, we're talking very complicated Medicaid billing that I will be honest, I've talked to Monica Mernan a lot about, and the depth that we're going now, a lot of the other programs aren't necessarily doing. But I think that you guys can at least handle it and think about, you know the system well enough. You can at least think about how you can do things moving forward. Again, especially, and I'm even thinking more about obviously the annual IFSPs, but when we're doing therapy, and I think probably you guys are better at it than our speech therapists. I think our speech therapists just tend to bill one code. That's it. We bill our expressive language code, but now we have some speech therapists who are addressing fluency, and they're addressing feeding. And so again, I'm wanting them to really think outside of the expressive language box as well. So that's kind of, again, my reasoning behind this. We're also supposed to do an annual Medicaid training. I feel like we talk about Medicaid all the time, so we haven't really sat down. If for those of you who were here when Lisa Suddeth was here, if you guys remember, she would get up in front and we talk about Medicaid billing. I don't really want to do that the way that it was done. I want to do it in a way that's going to benefit the program, while still making sure we're following, you know, obviously ethical and legal implications. Other questions that you guys have so far?
What's the reimbursement between therapeutic activities and specialized instruction? What's
Therapeutic activities is about double what you would get for specialized instruction. Specialized instruction and family service coordination are about the same. You're going to get about $40 an hour. If you were going to bill therapeutic activities, you would be closer to, you know, $85, $88 an hour. So again, your discipline codes are always going to pay better than your education codes, which are specialized instruction and family service coordination. But I think these are nice supplements to, again, document those other things that you're doing. The nice part is too, is they're letting us now overlap both of these codes. So again, say Nikki and Chloe and me, we're all in, you know, we're all in the room together, you know, working with the family. You know, Nikki's doing pure family service coordination and she is the family service coordinator. And Chloe and I are literally just, I don't know. I'm holding the baby and Chloe's probably watching me hold the baby. That's probably what's going on. Again, we can both bill specialized instruction while Nikki's doing family service coordination because we can overlap those codes now, where you used to just kind of be left with nothing if you were doing nothing. Does that make sense?
As long as the kid is present.
Correct.
For 27.
Correct.
So I have a question and thinking, I mean, that would go if like it was me and Lindy, and part of this, I'm the primary provider. So when she's doing her PT stuff, I can bill family service coordination, but then I'm jumping in for half the session and talking about feeding. So I would have two codes there, but then Jocelyn could, or not Jocelyn, but Lindy could then use the specialized instruction because she can't use family service. So that can fill her entire hour.
Bingo. Yep. So basically this T1027 code is like a family service coordination code for those of us that aren't family service coordinators. They have been trying for a really long time to change the wording in the procedure manual, because the way that it was rewritten back in 2014 is they made family service coordinator capitalized, meaning only the family service coordinator can provide the coordination, even though we all do family service coordination. But what happened is when Medicaid interpreted that, they said, okay, only the FSC can bill FSC once the IFSP is in place. And they're having a really hard time getting that re-looked at. So what people in our corner did was they basically pushed through for any discipline to be able to bill specialized instruction, and it can layer on top of other codes.
So it's almost like that T1027 can be like Botox. It could be like a filler code.
Yes, I need Botox so badly, Megan.
But that wouldn't be unethical though, like legitimately.
Right, yeah, because if you're, I mean, again, if Carrie's doing feeding and Lindy's in there and she's, you know, she's listening to Carrie, but the conversation is switched for whatever reason. And again, Lindy's not just sitting there checking her text messages and updating her Facebook. Like, she's doing intervention. It just happens to not be PT intervention at that point in time, the way ECSE or the way early intervention sees it.
So then, like, what would the note say that I would do for specialized instruction if I'm just kind of hanging out?
Yes. So what I would do if I were you is copy and paste the exact same wording from one service log to the next. Literally. You don't need to write anything different. If you're using family service coordination, you're going to use an FSC starter statement. But if you're billing a therapy discipline and you're billing T1027, those are both therapy. That's both intervention. So you just have to copy and paste. You don't have to reinvent your bill.
Okay.
And same thing, Carrie, if you're billing therapeutic activity and you're billing feeding, you're going to copy and paste the same log into both of those minutes. Because your session is your session. You're documenting everything that happened in the session.
So do we need to coordinate that time? I mean, at the end of the session, do I need to say, Lindy, you did PT, why don't you take the first 30 minutes and I did OT the second half, or whatever those numbers look like? Or is it okay for Lindy to take a portion of that visit, but it may overlap my therapy?
We don't want her PT overlapping your OT.
Okay, but everything else can overlap. Just the OT, the therapeutic codes can't overlap. So that's what we would have to make sure that we divide that out.
Correct.
To make it equal an hour for each of us.
Yes. If there's any question that Lindy was doing some PT stuff and you're doing some feeding, you need to make sure those don't overlap. But you can bill FSC, Lindy can bill T1027 during your off minutes.
So Monica, Laura, I know is going to support me with that kid that I picked up yesterday, and it's toward a call it. So if I'm billing like my OT code, then she would bill that like the T1027.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Hey, Monica.
Mm-hmm.
I have two questions. The first one is sometimes with when like if I had like Trina come in with me and we're offsetting our times, I've always been like, so if, let's say the session's from like 10 to 11, does it need it needs to be 10 to 10:29. So then Trina can go 10:30 to 11. Like even if we overlap like that same minute, like that end time minute to the beginning time minute, does that matter?
Right. Right.
Like 10 to 10:30. And then 10:30 to 11, you're technically overlapping
that minute.
I don't typically do it that way. I typically make it stop at like 10:29, or sometimes I'll be like 10 to 10:30 and then 10:31 to 11:01.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yes, if it, again, you're going to forget and you're going to go 10 to 10:30 and 10:30, 11.
No, I won't. I don't do it that way. So I just wanted to know if I should be doing it the other way. It's annoying.
It's totally fine, because a lot of these codes, these are 15 minutes, which is one unit. In the medical world, that's a unit of therapy. And if you provide 8 minutes of this treatment code, you're going to get paid for the full 15-minute unit. So if you're only billing 29 minutes, we're going to get paid for 30 minutes. Does that we're going to get paid for 2 full units.
Okay, that's actually helpful. I did not know that part. The second question I have is unrelated, but related to this, unrelated to my first question. I know we've already talked about this, so remind me. So if I go in for sorry, that's not my question. My question is, like Kelly and I, we had a Zoom meeting today. We were practicing signatures, and then the phone call hopped over to like one of our kiddos, and we started talking about a kiddo. Well, the kiddo's not present, so I can't bill specialized instruction. I'm not the FSC. So is it still that non-billable code? Like basically like no visit, not non-billable, because non-billable is like that multi-eval one, but the no visit and then just document.
Yeah, I think it's no proc, no therapy, which stands no procedure code, no therapy. Yep, you would do that one for your non-billable. And in that instance, yes, if the kid isn't present, Kelly's doing her FSC thing, you're tweeting, and checking your Facebook, you got to do a non-billable. Or if you're not tweeting and checking Facebook, you still have to do non-billable.
So in that situation, if I'm not the FSC and I consult, like say with Angie on a kiddo that we'll regularly do after visits for like a couple minutes, I don't document that.
You really don't have to
because
be honest.
She's going to document it as the FSC, right?
Yes, I know Angie very well, and Angie will absolutely document that because she's very thorough in her documentation. And I'm not even joking. I'm not being Michael Scott here. That's actually true. But yeah, so if the FSC is going to document it, you don't have to. I mean, you can, if like Amy Wilcox would, because her brain can't have gaps. So, her spreadsheet doesn't allow for that. And I would say this to her face, so I don't feel bad saying it behind her back right now either. So she would enter a non-billable, but you don't have to unless that just sits better with you for documentation, but you don't need to.
But it would be like, say if it's a 15-minute, 20-minute conversation, then obviously that's a good thing to document just because that's how you're just a note, I guess, in the CompuClaim for how you're spending your time.
I mean, if I were that nitpicky and I was like, what was Megan doing between 12:45 and 1:00 last Wednesday? Okay, I am never going to do that because I have like a billion other things to do. And plus, I don't want to do that. No, and you don't want me to do that. So that's not how I generally like to lead.
That's helpful to know because I had been, once we talked about documenting more so all of those things to make sure that our minutes add up, I had been doing that again. Like I did it when Amy gave us her spreadsheet, even though my brain doesn't work that way. And then I stopped. And then I started kind of doing that a little bit more. I'm not saying I'm great. I'm not Angie. I'm not Amy. But
Angie's good. I'm telling you, ladies.
Different Angie.
So I have a question. It may seem kind of silly, but how do you define child as present for a session? So let me set this up. So I had a session with the mom today, and the child was in the background and he was in and out of the Zoom. So he wasn't gone. I would have said that he was present and I would have built out my codes, but it was really conversation with mom, with occasionally she'd try something with the child. Does that make him present or not present?
That makes him present.
If he's sleeping on the couch next to her, present or non-present?
Katie Holting, what do you think?
We always build that as not present if they were sleeping.
Unless you're working on sleeping, right?
Unless you were working on some passive range of motion while he's sleeping.
Atta girl. This is why you came onto the team.
Go for it.
Yes, I will say this too. I have gone to many an evaluation and I have shown up and the child is asleep or falls asleep in mom's arms. And I will be perfectly honest, I bill a speech eval code. I mean, so because most of our evals anyway are more interview, parent report, so I'm comfortable with the eval piece being an eval billing. Plus, truthfully, we need that documentation that we provided 2 different discipline evals, and that's how we get that. If it's a therapy session, again, bill your, family service coordination. If the kid is sleeping and you can bill FSC. I feel uncomfortable billing, and it's not that you're not talking and coaching mom still and doing some of those things, but again, ethically, I feel like that might be stretching it a little more than my former Catholic self is comfortable with. I still have the Catholic guilt and still do. Sister Mary Michaeline beat it into all of us in 1st and 2nd grade.
So I'm going to complicate it by saying exactly what Katie said, if the child's sleeping on the couch. So my little medically complicated kiddo I talked about at team, she's oftentimes asleep most of the time just because she's so heavily medicated. So we do a lot of moving her body for her when she's sleeping. So there are times where I build 2 different codes like FSC because mom will have a long update about what's going on. Then I'll do the direct intervention. And obviously my note is the same because I write so much about both, but I don't feel like that ethically, maybe I'm wrong, but that seems correct because we are moving her body and we're doing quite a lot of work, even though she's not alert.
Yeah, and that's, I feel like, completely different than a 2.5-year-old who fell asleep.
True.
That I feel like when you have children who have medically complicated needs, it doesn't look the same and it can't. So I'm comfortable. I am 100% comfortable with that, Megan.
Okay.
Monica, so as part of, I know I've seen some kids recently where I will call the doctor, and I'm not the primary provider or FSC, but I'll call the doctor to get an order for orthotics sent. How do I bill that? Because I'm not usually calling from the home, and then I'll talk to the doctor. Is there any way to bill that other than just a no procedure to have it in the notes? Okay.
Nope. And not, if you're the FSC, you can, but if you're not the FSC, you can't. And again, it's instances like that were unfortunate of how the Medicaid procedure manual was interpreted based on how KDHE had submitted it. So that is family service coordination. You should be able to bill it, but until KDHE and Medicaid come together and say, okay, the FSC doesn't only provide family service coordination, anyone on the child's team can, we're kind of stuck at this point in time. So that was the former Part C coordinator, and her team really pushed for that. FSC only can bill FSC, unfortunately. That was how she interpreted the federal law, and we all know things can be interpreted differently by different people.
So I have a question. There's a place that, are you only allowed to have one FSC on the service page?
Yes.
Oh.
Nice try, though. I could petition IDEA. See how that goes. We can update it, IDEA 2020.
Well, if you're petitioning anyone, let's petition CompuClaim to allow us to put multiple codes in and put the times in on the same bill so that we don't have to do 3 different bills, because that is really irritating.
Oh, I like that one. You know what? They actually are pretty decent about listening to stuff. So I will, in fact, I have a meeting on Monday with the kind of director of the Medicaid at Greenbush. And so they just always are asking for wish list items. And I will say that. So you want it to be to where
I would like to go in, write my note, because basically you're saying we can just copy and paste that note. So like I could say, if I'm family service coordination and I have Lindy there, and so I'm doing that, and then I'm doing feeding, and then I'm also doing therapeutic activities, all of that I could go in and write the same note, and that there would be a place for the FSC, so T1017, and then I could say how many minutes I did that, and then how many minutes I did feeding, and how many minutes I worked on standing.
Okay.
And so it'd all be one note, and then that way it would take care of the crossover of the minutes that Megan McGee was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Because it would all be like, it'd be like Amy's spreadsheet, boom, boom, boom.
Okay, I like that. And I've often thought that too, actually. So like a procedure 1, procedure 2, procedure 3.
Yes. Like on our notes that we used to have, at the bottom, we used to be able to put all the notes down.
Notes.
With the minute. That would be fabulous.
Okay. I will do that on Monday when I meet with them.
Cool.
Hey, I was going to say for Angie, so when Angie's calling a doctor on behalf of a child that's not hers, it would behoove her to either call the family on Zoom and have the child's face right there so the child's present so she could do T1027, or be in the child's home so then she could bill, right?
I mean, again, if Angie, we're doing those things, but if Angie's not the FSC, she can't really be in the home by herself. She'd also need the FSC there.
In a perfect world, yes.
I mean, right. That's just, if we're at a 4, I know we're going for 2s, ladies, but if we're at a 4, the other thing Angie could do, Angie could call me, because I'm the family service coordinator. She could let me know that she talked to the doctor, and then I can bill those minutes as, again, we're now we're talking, I don't know what happens after 8:01, but like, am I worried about that $4 that Angie just made for us? No. What I really want to do is I want to get that $60 that Carrie was talking about earlier from doing an OT eval and feeding therapy. That's what I want. Now, I like the $4. Don't get me wrong, but I really like the $60. Like, let's also think about not making this so, awful that you come to hate CompuClaim and documentation. Let's just figure out again where we can scoop up some more money based on what you guys are already doing.
Monica, as far as our notes for our family service coordination, so if I go do a visit with Megan, and like I did today, and Megan did a lot, and I want to do my family service coordination note, and sometimes I'll jot down a few things, pretty simple, so when I go back, I have that note in front of me and I can look at it and remember what to ask, and there's a lot of stuff that I don't have to go in, but I could also be as basic as had consult with OT regarding, something that we mainly worked on. And it can be simple like that, correct? I mean, I don't have to write Megan's note that she's already writing.
No, you don't have to write Megan's note. The only thing I would say, if you're billing FSC for that joint visit, which is totally fine, make sure you start it off with a FSC starter statement. So coordinated and monitor the delivery of services by attending joint visit with occupational therapist to target mom's priorities of feeding. And then, and again, you can write more so you can pull it up. Now, the other thing I've asked CompuClaim, I think it would be lovely if Angie and Megan and me could all see all of our notes for the same kid. I mean, why can't we do that? If a child is on our caseload, why can we not? We can't edit it. We can't delete it. Can't we just see it? So that is also every year I say to them, and they just made it so if you're a CODA or you're an SLP assistant or a PTA, you can see, the PT and PTA. So I feel like we're making progress in terms of being able to do that, but I don't know why they've been so resistant. But I think that would also be lovely because you wouldn't need to do that. You could just go in and see what Megan talked about last time.
And then I feel like our notes, I don't know, I feel like they take more and more and more time. And I don't know if I feel like at one point it was pretty basic, but of course then you write them and I went, if I send them to parent, I just could you recreate my session from my note is kind of, and I don't know how, as far as capturing money, how much detail other than modeled and response given, as far as that.
Right. So the lovely thing about how we're reimbursed in early intervention is you bill your code, you do your minutes, and in the comment section, I'm not joking, you could literally write peanut butter and jelly and it gets submitted and Medicaid pays on the code and the minutes. They don't pay on the comments. So 2 years later, Medicaid does an audit and they pull peanut butter and jelly and they say, what the hell is this? And then we're in trouble and then we have to pay money back for that particular session and audit. So I would say this, there are certain pieces that Medicaid looks for, and that's things like modeled, demonstrated, child participated, child responded. That's what Medicaid wants. That's all they care about. KDHE wants to know how we coached the family and what reflection we had and, what the joint plan is, all that good stuff. So we try and squeeze them all into one note. So we're making lots of different people happy. I can send you guys all kind of a bullet point of all that needs to be in the note. Speech therapists are infamous for writing lots of information down about how words were said and what new word, we're kind of infamous for that stuff. I'm sure you guys are infamous for your own little things that you like to do within your disciplines too. That's really only for you and for your information. Medicaid doesn't care about any of that stuff. And they're never going to deny a claim because of something that you've written or not written. They're going to deny the claim because that child wasn't eligible for Medicaid that day, because sometimes they flux in and out of Medicaid. Is it 19 and 21, I think, and one of them pays for early intervention, one of them doesn't, and kids come on and off Medicaid all the time. But it's not going to be that you didn't document enough when you're submitting that into CompuClaim. Trina just left us. Trina had enough. Other questions, Katie? Again, you are the only person I'm thinking of who's recently done, well, Brooke, I don't know when you were up in Wyandotte County, what that looked like either. I know that's been a couple years as well, but anything else that you guys are doing drastically different in Wyandotte to capture money?
I think it was mostly just like at the annuals trying to have a second provider there, and then like you said, the exits like as much as you can to get those. And then I'll sometimes, like if a kiddo's like at the end of an eval, will do like a treatment code for those like 10-15 minutes of those strategies you give, even if they don't qualify. Do that as part of just documentation of like these are clinical strategies. So sometimes, I mean, and if they qualify, that's, 1 unit of a treatment code. So but I think that's pretty much, those were like the big pieces that we were doing. I didn't know about the overlapping of the T10, 27, and 17, so that's really good to know.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty new within, it probably started either right before or right after COVID happened, and I just was like, I don't care. So, and I'll say for our program, if we have a child who isn't eligible, you guys are marking on that form, that Medicaid form, that it's an eval only. And then what happens is if it's an eval only, Kathy doesn't get a script because we don't need a script to bill eval codes, but we do need a script to bill treatment codes. So I will say if you guys bill treatment for eval onlys, we're not going to get that money because that's not how our system is set up. To save Kathy work. So I would much rather have you bill T1027 than anything. Does that make sense? Because it's weird, but it's just the way it's paid.
So you're saying, like Katie was talking, like if you do a little bit of like, here's some things to try, let us know if you still have concerns, you could build that as specialized instruction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. You could still bill it as therapeutic exercises or whatever. We're just not, I mean, we're not going to chase that particular money because Kathy would resign and we don't want that to happen.
And then if we have a re-referral, so let's say if someone's not eligible, you change Medicaid to eval only paper, submit that, and then they call back for a re-referral. Do you need to do a new Medicaid sheet then because it said eval only?
So you don't need to do a new one, but what we'd want to do is pull that original one and then just like cross off, that it was an eval only, or uncheck it and resubmit it. The reason we don't want to do a brand new Medicaid notification form is we want that date that Bev fills in to always be the intake date, because that date is what allows us to back bill from intake. So if you change that date to be the date of the new eval, then we can't bill for those minutes that happened in between. So I will say Kathy runs reports that are called the held services reports, and those are reports that take all of your guys' billing, and it dials it down to the children who are Medicaid eligible, and then those reports come up with kids that we billed Medicaid on, but Medicaid hasn't paid us yet, and it's one of two reasons. We're either missing a script or we're missing the parent notification date. And so if you have a bounce back like that and you forget to turn in the eval, or you forget to turn the Medicaid form again, that kid's going to come up on Kathy's report, and she's going to all of a sudden see all these therapy codes, and she's going to figure out that kid was probably a re-referral because she used to do intake at one point too. So she knows the systems enough to be able to tweeze out why these kids can pop back up and suddenly have all these Medicaid treatment codes. So we've got some checks and balances. We don't miss out on that money. She might just be asking for a script 3 or 4 months later but we have a year to collect that money that you guys have billed. So it's also not that big of a deal. So that's one of those things. If you forget, it's okay. Because there, like I said, there's some checks and balances in place.
Well, and this is kudos to Angie, because this is for those of us who remember to check the eval only box on the Medicaid form.
I sometimes forget to, more than not.
I know.
So that actually makes me think of, because I know the caseload file form is in our caseload file for the discharged when they're not initially eligible. How do we go back? Where do we go find the form to, if we do this situation Angie's talking about, to get it back and fix it? Do we have to ask Kathy for that?
It should be in your form. It'll be in the child's folder, and you can pull it up, as a PDF and do your fill-in sign, and you can just, circle or X out or something like that. Or some of you guys are pretty good about keeping the Word document packet anyway, and you could always pull back up the Medicaid form, that they had originally signed, and you can just uncheck the eval only box also.
So we don't have to give it. Kathy doesn't need it again, is what you're saying.
Correct. Kathy lets me know when there are patterns of things that are happening that she wants me to talk to you guys about, and that has never, ever, ever come up. So she has some system in place, and I do think it's because this held services report. So she just goes in there. She can go in your caseloads again. If things were paper, this would be a lot harder, but she can access your guys' files instantaneously on the queue. So she just goes to get what she needs sometimes.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I have a question about what you guys are talking. Oh, okay. So when do I click the evaluation only? I guess I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it used to be located at the top of the page. Kathy wanted it on the bottom of the page. No, the staff wanted it at the bottom of the page because it's easier to see at the bottom when you're collecting signatures. Kathy hates it at the bottom because the way she stacks them in a tray, it covers it up. So there's no good place to put this. But if a child is not eligible at the eval, then you would check the eval only. And that indicates to Kathy, it's only an eval. There's no treatment. I don't have to get a script. So it saves her a little bit of work.
Gotcha. Okay.
Grand scheme of things, again, if you forget to do it, whatever, it's totally fine.
Okay, that makes sense.
Have I blown your mind? Do you regret joining? It's hard to tell the boss no on boss's day anyway, isn't it?
This was helpful for me. So I've had a lot of questions. So this has been good.
Okay. And when you guys have, again, as you're thinking about this and processing at a different level, when you have questions, reach out and we can talk through things. And I will be curious, this early into the year, if we can make some of these changes, I would love, we'll have some really good data on what this looks like these next 3 quarters. So another reason I kind of wanted to meet with you guys sooner than I've been putting it off for a while. But let me know when you guys have questions or if you want to double check something, and I'm happy to process and talk through it.
Okay, I have one final question. If you are doing a family service coordination code, and let's say you are doing 2 different activities from that list of 7 things or whatever, do you need to specify the minutes on that, or you can just do both and describe your stuff? Okay.
Yep. Just do one. Yeah. If you're billing FSC, just do it in one service log and then use your comments section to write down all the things that you did. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think that's it. Go forth and bill.
Thank you.
Thanks, Monica.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.
Have a great weekend.
Would it be okay to ask you a couple questions?
Yeah, I'll stay on.
I just don't want to everybody.
No, I could tell when you unmuted. I was like, I bet she has a few more questions.
I did. I had a question, I guess on the eval, because I don't know if I'm doing it correctly. I thought if I'm the evaluate, so when I do FSC, so if I'm FSC for the evaluation, I usually do those first like 30 minutes FSC, like doing the paperwork, or like 15 minutes, and then I bill the rest of it evaluation, doing like the health screen and the APS. And then I guess if I'm the evaluator, depending on how long I'm there, I do like 60 minutes if it's like we take the whole time. So I guess I don't know if I'm the evaluator. Like, am I supposed to be billing? Is that 60 minutes supposed to match exactly? Because like on Monday I did an evaluation and it took the whole hour. It was like an hour and 40 minutes because there was an interpreter. And then I just billed the 60 minutes complexity for the whole time. And I'm guessing that's not.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine to do. It's absolutely okay. If you're there past the 60 minutes, so again, if you're there for an hour and 40 minutes, so how many minutes is that? 100? I can't think. Is that 100 minutes? Yeah, Angie's saying yes. So you could theoretically bill 40 minutes of family service coordination because your eval code documented the hour that you were there. But if you want to document that you were there an additional 40 minutes, then I would put in a service log for family service coordination. Again, use one of your FSC starter statements, coordinating and monitoring the delivery of evaluations by talking to mom about development, child was eligible for services, using interpreter, you can, again, as long as you have your starter statement in there, the rest of the wording isn't particularly important because what Medicaid does is they would come in and they only pay for those 7 things or whatever, those 7 starter statements. So as long as you start off your billing with one of those, the information you write after is not quite as important to a Medicaid audit.
Okay. Okay.
So the way you did it was not incorrect. The way you did it was correct. Again, if you're there past that 60 minutes, what do you do with that extra time? And again, you can use FSC for that extra time you were there. Or again, you could use T1027 if you and mom and the interpreter are talking about, other things that are coming up and not just related to motor development or feeding, something like that.
Okay. And then when people are talking about billing, like the swallowing, like the therapeutic at the evaluation, would that be if at the end is that like if you're doing the end part where you're talking about strategies, is that what they're relating that to?
So I think that was more for an annual.
Okay. That wasn't, because I was like, oh gosh, should I be billing that?
No.
Evaluation.
Yeah, that when Carrie asked that question, that she was talking about in reference to it like an annual IFSP.
Okay.
So yeah, if you're just doing an eval, honestly, I wouldn't expect you to have any other eval codes, or I would expect you to have an eval code and maybe some FSC minutes. I wouldn't expect you to have treatment minutes too.
Okay.
Because really we're there to determine eligibility. So that should be the code. The treatment code should come after. In my mind, the treatment code should come after the child is in intervention. I feel that makes sense to me and the way my brain works, but yeah, you can use the FSC code or the specialized instruction code to kind of capture those extra minutes above and beyond your complexity code minutes for your PT or your OT eval.
Okay. That's helpful. Cause when you were saying, or when that conversation was going on, I'm like, oh my gosh, is Monica looking at my stuff? Like, this is not correct. And I was like, I thought this is how I'm supposed to do it. So, and I haven't been the evaluator very often. So usually I just do I am FSC quite a bit. And it's like that first 15, 30 minutes, depending how long, like the paperwork and the red folder form lasts. And then the rest of it, I'll do either like if it's a 30, the 45 or 60. So that's correct.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yep. And Deirdre would have taught you the way you're doing it because that's the way we've been doing it. Like, okay. I haven't, because I'm meeting with Deirdre next week. So if you say any of this to Deirdre before next Wednesday, she's not going to know what you're talking about. So next Wednesday, she'll know because she and I have a session to meet and kind of go through some of this information. Okay. But again, the way that you, especially as new staff, have been taught, that's the way we've always been doing it for the last 3 years. So now we're going to try and shift a little bit to see if we can expand our revenue just a little bit as well.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was doing it correctly, so that's helpful. And then,
Totally.
unless Susie has a question, I just had one more kind of question that's off billing, but I don't know.
Yeah, hold on. Let me make sure I'm not recording. Pause.